How long has this been your beat?
3 years.
Well, you just came down here as a filmmaker to do it.
I was a news anchor for 13 years. I just wanted to cover things that weren't being covered.
It's a huge issue. I can't believe the quantity of money that's going into trying to stem the tide here.
The biggest issue is not the groups of families that are coming over seeking asylum, it's the people we don't know, Ross.
They're keeping an eye on us.
They don't have the rules we have. They're the cartel. You can see Border Patrol sitting there. They will send people down to distract Border Patrol, and then they might send drugs over or something nefarious.
How quickly can they get over the wall?
It's within a matter of seconds.
You're kidding.
I've sat up there with Border Patrol and watched them run as soon as they clear the wall. They run off into these kind of more urban areas and poof. And that's the same with the drones and the drugs.
G'day and welcome to RealityCheck. I'm your host, Ross Coulthart. As everybody watching this show would know, we are taking an extremely sceptical view of the official explanations for the so-called drone incursions across much of the United States in the past few months. Officially, the White House position is that these drones were somehow authorised research drones, or for other purposes, in some way authorised by the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA. That's the official statement from the White House press spokeswoman. But that contradicts, of course, what the Federal Aviation Administration has given under oath to the Congress, that it knew nothing about these drones. And as we're seeing on 60 Minutes, 60 Minutes has also heard from the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee saying that there's still no firm explanation for what these drones are. So one of the questions we asked ourselves last year when we were doing these investigations into these drones was, is it possible that these drones are being sent across the border by organised crime cartels? Are they being used for illicit purposes by organised crime gangs smuggling drugs and perhaps even people across the border? Could that explain these incursions? The best person to speak to on this is Ali Bradley, who's an extraordinary correspondent, probably America's preeminent reporter on America's southern border. Ali's soon to start her own program called Bradley on the Border, and I can promise you, knowing how good a journalist she is, it's going to be good fun. But here's my interview with Ali Bradley, where we went to the wall, yes, the great big wall, and we asked the question, could these drone incursions be explained away as organised crime infiltration with drones by the cartels? Here's Ali.
Ali, at long last, lovely to meet you.
It's great to meet you,
Your
Ross.
legend precedes you.
Oh, and yours as well. It's good to meet out here in my stomping ground, sir.
So this is the wall.
This is the wall. This was actually built under the Obama administration.
Oh, it's not the big wall.
It's not the big, huge wall. That one is down there a little bit further. That's a little bit taller. We're looking at about 17 to 18 foot right here. You can see the razor wire, multiple layers of kind of enforcement there. But down there, you have what is considered the Trump wall. It's about 30 feet.
So for our audience, that's Mexico?
That is Mexico right there. And that's an area regularly exploited by the criminal cartels. When we come out here, we see scouts out there sitting up there with binoculars watching Border Patrol, kind of literally with the high ground.
So they're watching to see when Border Patrol's around and looking to jump across at the first
Absolutely. And you can see there's a Border Patrol vehicle right here, and then there's another one up on the ridge up there. So they're watching the cartel movement while the cartel is watching them. So as soon as, what they do is task saturation. So they might send one individual down. You can see trash all along this mountainside when you look really closely, because those are footpaths down from that ridge up there. So they're going to walk down here with the guide of the cartel. They use phones and walkie-talkies and guide them every step of the way. And what they'll do is they'll send one person over here. That person will clear this wall and be a distraction to Border Patrol. Then they'll send other people down here while Border Patrol's busy.
So what I notice on the US side is there's cameras everywhere. I mean, up over here, for example, on that hill there's clearly really high quality video cameras and presumably radar watching to see who's coming.
Right, but the problem is you have to have the resources to respond to what's coming. And that's what we've been up against for the last 3 years is you don't have the manpower to respond to the criminal activity. And so those individuals, a lot of times you call them gotaways, they'll clear this wall and they'll fade off. I mean, you can see all the places that they can run and hide and they disappear like that. And Border Patrol is constantly kind of in a reactionary standpoint.
So this brings us to what we're here to talk about. Obviously, there's a huge swathe of military training areas right here across the bottom of Arizona, right next to the border. And the pilots, people there have been seeing strange objects, unexplained, anomalous objects, doing weird things. And what we're here for is to try and investigate, could it possibly be drone activity from the cartels? Because tell me a little bit about that. How much are the drones being used by the cartels to bring stuff over the border? And I presume also to monitor border protection.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So what they'll do, and they used to primarily focus on sending over nefarious things like drugs, using the drones to physically drop those items into the United States. It might be someone's backyard, it might be a restaurant's garbage can. They run over, they grab it, and off to the races that individual goes that collects the item, right? And then the drone goes back. Well, now we're seeing it more and more used to be kind of scouting tools, to watch Border Patrol, to be the eyes in the sky, if you will, so that they can send individuals over. Now, if those individuals are moving drugs or, illicit materials, that's a different element there. But when it comes to the drones, they are still moving drugs, according to my high-level sources within Border Patrol. And they are using them to surveil Border Patrol as well.
How many drones are we talking about? Is it a big activity by the cartel?
So in this area alone, I actually talked with a recently retired chief of this area who was saying that they were seeing hundreds of drones a day. Hundreds.
Hundreds a
He
day?
said so many that they couldn't even keep track of them, that they were seeing thousands a week. And now what he's saying to me is that the cartel used to use Chinese drones. Very normal. That's what you can buy at the store, a DJI drone or a Hawkeye drone, right? Those are out there. But they switched over, he says, to using French and Russian agricultural drones.
So bigger drones.
Bigger drones. He says they can move 5 to 10 kilos of drugs across the border. And the biggest issue there is the technology that they're using, we're not able to intercept like we were with the Chinese drones. They're working right now to kind of expand not only their physical footprint, but what they're able to do. And that's kind of at a standstill right now when it comes to the legalities of that.
So obviously, the question I'm here to ask is the anomalous activity that's being seen in the military training ranges and indeed over Tucson, can it be explained by these drones that are being seen here, being brought in by the cartel?
Well, this source that I talked to, who was boots on the ground when this was happening, says that they actually got video of an anomaly, something that they couldn't explain
So
back
this
in
is something
2021.
that hasn't been publicly revealed yet?
Not that we know of. I have not seen any indication that this is something that the media is aware of, that anybody is aware of, but the military is, because they apparently but saw this kind of anomaly on video, and they couldn't determine what it was. They said it didn't look like the hundreds of drone incursions that they're seeing every day. Again, it's not a one-off. They're not seeing one drone here and there, hundreds a day.
Sure.
So they know what these look like. They know what they're doing.
So they can tell the difference between a commercial or even a military drone and what you're talking about that he's described, which is something anomalous.
Unexplainable. They don't know. And because it was unexplainable, the military got interested. So Fort Huachuca, the military base nearby in Sierra Vista, came and actually chatted with them, got the video of this kind of anomaly. And to my knowledge, they still haven't published what it was. They still haven't determined what it was. And this is years later. Now, if they have, they're not sharing it openly with the media.
So just take me through that. When was this incident?
So this source says it was around 2021 when this happened, when they saw this kind of anomaly. Again, in the midst of hundreds of drone incursions a day, they're seeing something that they can't describe. There's no indication of what this is. He said it was darting really fast and it would go off screen and come back.
Let me just pin you down there. When you say darting really fast, is he suggesting that it's not moving like a drone would move?
No, that's what he was saying. He said that there was no indication. Well, I think they wanted to believe it was a drone at first, right? You want to be able to explain what you're seeing.
You try and put a pattern to what
But they
you
just
know.
couldn't.
Yeah.
Again, seeing hundreds of these things a day and then seeing something that's darting on and off screen and that is moving quicker than what the drones are that they've seen, that would raise those concerns and those questions because they don't know what it is. And you have Border Patrol sitting here constantly watching the skies, watching things, being surveilled. What was this item? Something that no one's seen before.
This must be the most surveilled area on the planet, really, when you look at the camera gear over here.
I mean, right there, there's 3 clusters of towers, and there's one, I mean, there's 8 towers within our eyesight in just a stone throw, right?
And they've got radar attached to them as well.
Yeah.
So these systems that he's describing, presumably they picked it up on radar first and were trying to engage the object.
Yeah. And that's what they can do, right? They can get in and they can engage with it, and they can actually disable it. They can land that item where it is, or they can send it back south.
And do you know were they using that electromagnetic pulse weaponry to try and bring it down?
I don't know if they attempted to or not. I'll try to find out, but I don't know if they attempted to bring it down. It sounds like even if they did, they wouldn't have had any luck, because it doesn't sound like it was something that was within their capabilities.
So whatever it was, it got away.
It got away. I asked them, did they have it in their possession? Did they have the physical apparatus of whatever this thing was? Did they shoot it down? Did they dismantle it? No, they never got their hands on it. They just have video evidence that it was something they couldn't explain.
So what do you think, Ali? Do you think that what's happening here with the cartels could explain the anomalous activity that they're seeing in the military training ranges? Why would the cartels' drones be going anywhere near military training ranges?
You know, the cartel wants intel on the United States. That's their MO. That is their number one priority, is to always be one step ahead of us. So what better place to do that than to infiltrate our military installations in some capacity, to be around those vicinities and to be able to gather intel. We know these drones are capable of doing a lot, right? Now, this anomalous item, why was that down here? Why was that in this area?
Sure. It's really interesting, isn't it? Because all over America, there are objects that are being described as drones by military officials. The Pentagon, the investigators from the Pentagon's UFO investigation office, they use the word drones, but this anomalous example that you're talking about, they can't say it's a drone, can they?
No, they would like to. Like I said, I think in the beginning, you know, well, that's what this is, because you want to explain it, but then they couldn't, and that's why the military came in to
So what do you think? Do you think by definition something unknown like that is a national security, public safety issue?
I feel like that's a rhetorical question, my friend. I feel like having things in our airspace, especially nearby any kind of military installation, is something that would cause concern for our national security. When you have something that's unexplainable in your airspace and the military doesn't even know what it was, so that would likely mean it's not a civilian around here, you know, flying something around. It's coming from somewhere else. And so how could that not be a national security threat, especially if we don't know what it was?
It is quite sad. I mean, you look along here and you just think of the money that's been poured into the resourcing, this attempt to block people coming over the border.
Well,
the cartel's always one step ahead.
One step ahead, and you know how funding works with the United States. We have to have data and statistics.
Is it an issue for border protection that they're not getting the money they need to do the job properly?
I don't know if it's so much that they're not getting the money, but they certainly don't have the manpower, and they're not really getting that restaffed.
Yeah.
You know, we have 8,000 to 10,000 agents that are going to be retiring that were hired after 9/11.
Do you know, it's a funny thought. So from what you're telling me, there's probably a spotter from the cartel right there.
Oh, absolutely. I wish we could see it. When we're down here, a lot of times the bushes aren't as grown in, right?
Yeah, sure.
A lot of times you just see kind of sticks, but we always see individuals up there. They will be hunkered down all day watching us, watch them. And again, the U.S. is always in reactionary standpoint when it comes to funding, when it comes to anything. They have to have a reason to say, we're going to put a bunch of money towards this and we're going to stop this from happening. But this is what they're dealing with right now. As you can see, there's razor wire cut down all over the place.
So that's where somebody's come over the wall.
Absolutely. So they're breaching this wall.
That wall?
They do. I've seen them actually climb the wall multiple times. And unfortunately, wherever they are on the other side of Mexico, there's usually some kind of established residence or business or something like that. So it's pretty easy for them to hide out on the other side until it's go time, until it's time to cross over. And the cartel's up there watching and will signal when that is. And they're using those drones as well. Basically, it doesn't even look like there are any breaks, right? But when you get closer, you can see all this wire is kind of removed, and they just, when they reach over, they can clip it down, or they can just clip it through these different bollards right here.
So
and they come over
the cartels are sending people over all the time.
all the time. And a lot of times they don't get caught.
Right.
They're the evaders. They're the gotaways. They're the ones that want to remain undetected.
And at the same time, they're using drone technology to spy on the US.
Absolutely. I mean, why wouldn't you? When
Yeah.
they have the capabilities to do that, why wouldn't you?
Sure.
And so, like I said, they're up there at the high ground, but then they're also one step ahead of us because they're flying drones over us into U.S. airspace, because we call those incursions. They're not incursions if you don't cross
Sure.
the barrier, right? So that's happening, what my source says, hundreds of times a day.
That's amazing.
I mean, you can't even wrap your head around that. And all they have to do is kind of lay down.
So you could have somebody skulking around behind that little garage there.
Oh, absolutely.
They could run out with a rope and be over in 30 seconds.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And the cartel's orchestrating all of that. They're watching us too. The cartel is right now.
Right.
They've got our number, my friend. So they know where we are. They're watching Border Patrol. So the Border Patrol truck is gone now.
Yeah.
Went somewhere else. So this would be an opportunity if the cartel wanted to do something. There's nobody here, but we're here. So
Sure.
we're acting as a deterrent for DHS right now. But as you can see, so there's multiple layers of this, but it makes it pretty easy to scale this wall and get down here.
So what do they do? Just throw a grappling hook up, or?
I've seen them just use their hands and feet
You're kidding.
to climb. And other areas, they do have ropes and ladders, and the ladders are basically made out of that same material. They just have little hooks on the top, and they hook them on,
Wow.
climb up, and then they pull them down and run off. And so it's pretty standard operating. But you can see, this is interesting here, because you can see this fencing was obviously put there and soldered on, right? And there's a big gap right here.
Oh, so they've taken it off.
So it's interesting, yeah, and you can
Oh,
see
so
them cutting
you can
through
see,
that
you
too.
could put your hands behind it and just pull yourself out. Wow.
Yeah, so it's definitely something that they're exploiting and utilizing every day. And that's
Wow.
why Border Patrol sits here, is this is a volatile area that's constantly utilized by the cartel to send people and things across.
Well, you can see why, because once you're here, it's
Goodbye.
open season.
I mean, where do you go?
Sure.
And there's semi trucks everywhere down here. There's, containers they can hide in. There's all kinds of things. But look at this. So you were talking about don't they get ripped to shreds? You can see clothing.
Oh,
hanging
wow.
From that one. So indications that they use this area. Up there you can see some clothing, and down here you can see some as well. So when we talk about the drone, the anomaly, right in 2021, you know more about the things in the sky than I do, I'm sure.
Sure.
In 2021. Drones were not at the capacity that we're seeing them now.
Very good
So
point.
that brings
Yeah.
up something to me that, we were seeing hundreds of drone incursions, and that they weren't as accessible to the human public, right? To citizens. And they were very expensive. Now every John, Harry, Adam, they have a drone.
Sure.
So now you're like, well, it could have been a civilian. Back in 2021, what was it?
Absolutely.
Who was it?
Very good question.
Because not as many people had the capabilities or the financial means to fly a drone.
How many of these drones are being seen at night? Like, they're obviously bringing them over when they can be least detected. Do you have any idea how often it's
I
at
don't
night
know.
versus day?
I'm not sure, but I do know that according to some of my sources in the Del Rio sector, which is in Texas, they also see drone incursions, and they believe that they weren't able to use thermal technology kind of early on. Now they do believe that the cartel is using thermal technology with these drones.
So they're cloaking them.
And what they will do is they can see the agents on the ground in the dark with their thermal imagery.
Wow.
So I have a source that was literally on the ground, and it was pitch black, and a drone flew over and stopped on top of him. Wow. So if you couldn't see at night with thermal imagery, then how did you know that guy was there? So they're using thermal technology to be able to detect Border Patrol at night. So they are using them at night as well.
Look, there's probably so much money in it. They've probably got better gear than we have.
They're a $13 billion a year industry, my friend.
13 billion?
13 billion. They were making 32 million a week at the peak when they were sending individuals over into the Del Rio sector.
Wow.
Back in December, it was 32 million a week, according to the chief of Border Patrol and also to the GOP lawmakers.
So to summarize where we're at, yes, there's a hell of a lot of drones here, but it doesn't explain the anomalous objects we're possibly talking about here.
It doesn't, because they know what the drones are. They know what drones are out there. When they pivot to a French or Russian drone, they know that.
Sure.
So what are these other items? What was that other item in 2021? I don't understand it. I don't know what they're seeing. And it kind of, I don't know if itchy is the right term, but it makes me a little itchy to know that there are things that we can't explain, that there are things that we can't describe, that people have clearly seen, and people that have the credentials and have backed that information come hell or high water. I mean, they're willing to put their credibility, their life, everything on the line to say that's what I saw. And so how can you definitively say that's not what you saw, because no one else can explain it either?
It makes me wonder whether it's just purely and simply because we've got all this technology along here on the border, which has the capacity to pick up these objects, whether they've been here all the time.
You know, that's a good question, because the technology, was it the chicken or the egg, right?
Absolutely.
And we question that all the time. You don't know what you don't see. And so how much more is happening that we don't see, that we don't have a camera pointed at? In this area, what I'm told here is that they only have about a mile radius of a footprint that they can actually intercept these drones and actually detect these drones. A mile? So what's happening outside of that radius?
Absolutely.
And we know the cartel will go outside of that radius, but what else is happening outside of that? So when you're seeing hundreds of incursions a day within that small footprint, they're trying to get it expanded with no movement. What's happening outside of that footprint that we're not seeing? You don't have the capabilities to know that.
Ali, thank you so much for giving us your time and your expertise.
Yeah, I think that we're going to have some fun down here and
I
figure
think
out
so.
what's going on.
Our
but
adventure continues.
alas, it does.
So it was great to be able to meet our correspondent Ali Bradley on the southern border last year and see for ourselves the issues with the wall, the weaknesses in our border and the lack of resourcing that means that organised crime cartels are able to smuggle people and drugs across the border, including with drones. As Ali explained there, it's quite obvious that the cartels are pretty clever. They're very sophisticated. They're using highly advanced drone technology that's often difficult for our border patrol people to detect. But that doesn't explain, it's quite clear, the extent of incursions by objects over military bases in Arizona and other states much further to the north. I don't think it's plausible, seeing what we've seen with Ali, that those illicit organised crime cartel drones can explain the anomalous objects we're seeing on military bases, not just in Arizona, but frankly right across the continental USA. There's a huge hole in the official explanation for the drones. Officially, of course, they're supposedly FAA authorised, and the ones that aren't, they're supposedly recreational drones that have somehow strayed. Frankly, that doesn't wash. I've been told multiple times by my own sources that these drones have resisted attempts to bring them down, that they have some kind of ability to operate with impunity over often very sensitive military air bases, which have used high-pulse microwave weapons to no effect against them. Thanks very much to Ali Bradley for helping us there. And just to flag, Ali's got a great new show coming on NewsNation called Bradley on the Border. More about it in the box below. You'll be able to watch her on our NewsNation YouTube channel, where she's joining me as a neighbour. Thanks once again for joining RealityCheck. By the way, we're very interested in hearing from anyone in that New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada region, the great swath of American desert, who knows anything about the anomalous objects that we know we're hearing from many military people are being reported operating extensively in those areas. I'm told military bases are being buzzed almost nightly by strange objects that can't be explained away as drones, no matter what the White House wants you to think. As Senator Roger Wicker of the Senate Armed Services Committee has confirmed, the Pentagon is still mystified by these drone incursions. I think that is an extraordinary admission. More soon from RealityCheck on the anomalous goings-on in the Great American Desert, both above ground and below ground. Oh yes, it's underground as well. More soon. And if you've got any information you want to send us, we'd love to hear from you. Thanks very much for joining us. Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And please don't forget to click that red subscribe button to ensure you get more of NewsNation's unbiased and fact-driven news coverage.